within the presentation today, I was just going to break down into a little bit more detail about the way we work, or I work as a physio within MND. So that's a sort of an overview of the things that I may be involved in, but I wanted to break down and talk about some quite specific things. I do feel that most people know about physio, but when it comes to how physio can help in MND, I think it's quite specific. I believe I'm still having technical difficulties. So I'm
go into your PowerPoint window. You want to look at that one? There you go. Oh, perfect. I'm not sure if I actually could. There you go.
Is that right?
Yeah, I just can't see my notes. Can I get rid of these? Oh, that's great.
So I guess physio is about maintaining function and quality of life. And when I engage with yourselves, I'll do a comprehensive assessment to understand what is your passion for life, what are the things you really want to continue as long as possible, and how we can adapt or add things in order for you to achieve that. So everyone has different things they enjoy in life, and I think it's, I guess it's worth pointing out here, sometimes people think about physio as exercises. Physio isn't just about exercises. I don't advocate that someone starts going to the gym when they've been diagnosed with MND if they've never loved the gym before. We want to use the activities you do within your life to maintain your function, rather than introducing things because for the sake of it. We want to, you've got a limited amount of energy and we want to use that energy to do the things you enjoy. So it's actually about maintaining the things you enjoy and being able to do those, and those are the things that keep your range and your strength. So I did put a couple of photos up here. They reminded me of a few things that have happened in my life. I was travelling through Africa, and I do remember some other people that were travelling through. They happened to be American, and they said to a guy that I was with, how was he maintaining his strength? Like, you know, what does he do? Does he carry his weights in his backpack so he can go to the gym? We're in Africa. And it's sort of like we're looking at a guy that's carrying like a massive backpack and with, you know, clothes, etc. for over a month's travel, and it's kind of like, yeah, you don't need to be going to the gym and doing weights or carrying your weights in your bag when you're already obviously doing a lot of strengthening within what you're doing trekking around Africa. The same, I saw this picture to the right of, I think he was actually a TV presenter, gave up work and is living life on a boat, very nice, with his young daughter and partner. And instead of going to the gym, he puts his daughter on the his back in the morning and does his press-ups. So I guess to me, it just highlighted that really functional way of the way we want to work is asking you, what do you enjoy? What are you doing? We're not going to do exercises in the morning and then you say, I haven't got enough energy now to go out for a coffee. That's what I really enjoy. So it's about building in. Going out for coffee is actually exercise. That's what we're doing it for. So fatigue is a very real part of MND, and it affects everyone differently, but I guess that's why we save the energy for the things you love. But I think I read a really interesting, or I was at a really interesting presentation where they were talking about positive tiredness. So fatigue is a real thing, but we also know that exercise, if you've got mild to moderate symptoms, is important, mild exercise. But when I say exercise, again, it's about functional exercise. But if you think to things in your life, I know this is really true for me, if I've got nothing on and I feel more tired than if I'm really, really busy. So there is a degree of looking at what's fatigue and tiredness, or what is, I guess, boredom. So we want to find that balance, and I see some nodding. We want to find that balance of how much activity and what is the right activity, and that's what we will work on together.
Two screens, so your mouse is up there. You just need to come down.
Jason, my new manager, is learning quickly. My technical skills are very, very limited.
Always face-to-face meetings.
I did say that.
Where do you normally have? Sorry. Hi. I need to press that. Why is it? It's not coming out. Working? Where's that? You've lost your mouse.
Yeah. Okay, that's not a touch screen, is it, Matt?
We still have audio.
Yeah.
John, I am not.
You normally have to take it.
Can you just
I will
touch,
give you
or
like
can
a
you?
false sense of security.
Oh, there you go. Just use the buttons.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I might have skipped.
No, you're right. Okay, sorry, we're
getting there.
Yeah, getting there. Yeah, it is a very big learning curve. So there might still be times when we do look at an exercise program for very specific things. So as you lose strength, it's really important to maintain range of your joints and your muscle length. So if I can sort of break that down a little bit more, for example, you might within a day, when you're dressing yourself, hanging the washing on the line, be reaching up. Oh, this shows a shock. I probably used the wrong example, but putting your hands in the air to put the washing on, you're within the day taking your joint into one of its end range positions. As you lose strength, depending where you lose the strength, it might be that you're not doing that anymore and you get tight into those positions. The tighter you are, or if you get tightness, that can lead to some pain, which we want to avoid, but also it can lead to the weakened muscles having to work even harder against tight muscles or joints. So sometimes we might look at a program of stretches, but it's very specific to each person. So it's not generalised. It's what muscles do we need to maintain, and again, it might be that you're already maintaining some of the muscle length within your routine of the day or what you're doing, so we might not need to do that. Or you might be, for example, a calf stretch might be done on a step, and you might just do that every time you enter the house, for example. So we try to build it in rather than you spending a day doing exercises. But the pictures there show we're also wanting to look at posture. So again, posture is really important. If you lose your good posture, your muscles have to work harder to keep you upright, and that makes walking, it makes standing, it makes even sitting more difficult, and maybe more could lead to some pain. Obviously, exercises might be looking at maintaining function. So again, sometimes, well, we might come to that later about maintaining function around transfers. We'll look at compensation, ways that you can do things differently but still do them independently. And we'd want to try to maintain strength in the muscles that are not affected. So we want to maintain strength as long as we can. And then the last one is prevention of pain. But again, really can't emphasise enough, it's about building exercises into life versus doing them as on their own. Oh. So transfers is something else that physio looks at. Here I've put a number of ways of transferring, but generally we want to maintain your independence with transfers as long as possible. And as we know, MND affects everyone very differently. So how someone's going to transfer or the help that they're going to need is going to differ. And that's why individual assessment from a physio is really important, to make sure we're looking at the right progression at the right time. If we change things too early, it can have flow-on effects. For example, when we're standing, we're actually maintaining and putting weight through our legs. We're maintaining the range in our ankles. So that it allows us to continue to stand. When we stop that, that's when we might need to introduce stretches. So that's why we want to look at the transfer and how that's impacting on other things. So the picture there with the pool table is and the one with the Christmas tree is showing a slide board. That's not necessarily something we use all the time. You have to still have quite good upper limb function. So it's not appropriate for everyone to transfer that way, but it may be appropriate if your upper limb function's a lot better than your lower limb function. The photo at the bottom on the deck is showing a transfer belt being used, or a walking belt. And that can be a way that someone can assist you, not to do the whole thing, not to stand you, but to help bring your weight into the right position over your knees to help with a stand. So there's lots of different options, but again, it's about looking at it at the right time. I think it's really important psychologically to be able to maintain that independence and as long as possible. And it might be that you have a range of different ways of transferring. For example, I think it's really important to be able to feel that you can still go to different places, like go over to friends and still use their toilet, go out to restaurants and feel like you can still sit in the chair that may or may not be exactly the same as the one you've got at home. You'd be saving your energy to be able to do those more complex transfers, but you might at home be using something different, even a hoist, but we want to try and maintain some transfers so that you are able to still get out in the community and do the things you love. The other thing that I did want to put across is that sometimes, so workplace health and safety, if you have a support worker or carer, they sit under workplace health and safety legislation, where the legislation is you can't fully lift someone, so they need to be able to contribute to the transfer. Now that is, so I would work with yourself and any support workers, and again, the transfers we might teach a support worker may be different from what informal support chooses to do, because informal support doesn't sit under legislation. So we work to work out what's going to work best for yourselves. Here's some photos of hydrotherapy. I guess I have a love of water myself, and quite extensive experience in hydrotherapy and in actually establishing a hydrotherapy pool in England, and working in Greece on an island where the client wanted to continue to use the beach daily. So I don't, for me, hydrotherapy is broader than just going to a pool and doing exercises. It's actually about if you have a love for water, or even if a love of like going to the beach and walking on sand, it's about working with you to try to continue the access, and it may be modified how you do it, but the access to the water activity that you enjoy. There's a range of things we could do. We could develop a very formal hydrotherapy program that works on specific things. The water's a great environment because of the resistance of water, but also the fear of falling, and your balance is very different in water. So it allows, I guess, people to maintain confidence with standing, walking, testing their balance for longer, which can help to maintain function on land. So we could use it in a quite different ways. The exercises that you see with the person in the floats lying on their back can be used to do stretches, particularly for the trunk. Those stretches that I'm doing there, or they are actually arm exercises, but there are trunk stretches that you can do that help to maintain some range, that you can get quite stiff if you've altered the way you're rolling and things in bed, that you just can't do on land. So I find it a really good environment to work in, but again, I wouldn't look to put someone or discuss with someone going into a pool if they've never liked water. It's about, do you enjoy water? Is that something that would give you the pleasure? There's lots of psychological benefits of still being able to do that. So yeah, it could be going to the beach, could be going to a local lagoon is something we're looking at the moment with a client, or it could be going to a pool. Generally what will happen with the process is I will talk with you about what we want to achieve with hydrotherapy or water, and then give you forms that are personalised to go to your doctor to get a medical clearance. Now, the reason for that is there's your doctor, GP, generally is who people would go to for that, have a good understanding of your whole medical background, and there are some things that don't necessarily contraindicate you going into the water, but they mean that you really need to think about how we're going to accommodate them to make sure that it's safe for you to be in the water. So, you know, talking about pegs, how you're going to spigot off the peg, talking about catheters, how you spigot off that, talking about management of any maybe blood pressure issues. The heated pools, the temperature can have those, can have different effects. So I'll certainly, if your doctor identifies any medical things, then we'll discuss them and how we can accommodate them. But we do those forms as a matter of caution first, and then we'll work out what we're going to do. Normally, it's either in your own pool, and if you're wanting to get into your own pool, and just even use it as I've got clients that just want to get in with their grandchildren, but the access to their pool isn't good, and so I'll work with our OT to look at how we can maybe get the pool adapted with rails or a pool hoist in order to make that a safe option. But normally to do that, the more information we can provide to NDIS, the more likely that is to be funded. So we'd normally go to a local pool to trial a hoist, trial the steps or with a rail or whatever we're looking at, and set it something so that we can say to NDIS, we are really going to use this. This is something we're really serious about. The other option is just to go to a local pool that we identify as having the right access, and we set a program that you'd either continue independently or with informal care, or with a support worker, or we have an allied health assistant that on some occasions that might be the deemed the best scenario. So we just talk about what is the best scenario for you to continue those exercises. But I wouldn't generally be doing weekly physio. I'd set a program and review it regularly rather than doing the weekly physio. Hydro, sorry. Just, I guess, talking a little bit about gait. Again, very similar to what I talked about with transfers. It's important to find the right timing to introduce any gait modification or sticks or AFOs, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, because if we introduce things too early, it actually can alter the way you walk. So, for example, I've put a photo of a gutter frame. That's a frame that may work quite well if your grip or your upper limb function's not as good, because you lean on that with your forearms. But when you're walking with that, it alters normal gait pattern, so we don't want to introduce that earlier than needed. But if we don't get the right timing for things, then falls can happen, and quickly that can lead to loss of confidence. So I guess it's working closely together to make sure we find the right time for introducing the right things. So I've just put a couple of examples there. But there's lots of different options, and it's different for everyone. So it's not sort of, this is a very general overview because there's a lot that goes into making a decision around the right things to introduce. Most people will want to maintain their walking as long as possible, but there might be times when a wheelchair might be appropriate to increase the endurance so that you can still do things that you love. So I actually saw someone yesterday, and she wants to be able to continue to go to the zoo and go out to the shops, go on short holidays. That she's finding, although she's completely independent with her walking, it's the fatigue that's impacting, and to be able to do that, a wheelchair is probably going to be the best option for those longer trips, but she's still independent. So there's sometimes a combination of what people will use. I've got clients that are using trekking sticks on the beach because it gives them more balance, but using only a stick everywhere else. So there's lots of different options, and I guess just reiterating that it's around the right prescription at the right time. I've put in here about foot drop. So I think I'll just briefly describe what a foot drop is, just for those that don't know. It's where the muscles in the front of the leg, quite often initially it's fatiguing and you're no longer, and then lead eventually to further loss of strength. But initially it might just be fatiguing. So after a period of time, you find that you can't, when you're walking, lift your forefoot, so your toes in the front of your foot, to clear the ground, and you end up compensating potentially with bending your knee more or bringing your leg out to the side so that you don't trip over. Or it might be that then you lose that ability to, you might still be able to lift the foot, but you can't control it and it slaps down. People talk about hearing the slapping when the foot slaps down because you can't control the lifting of that foot long enough. There's lots of different, we call them AFOs, so ankle foot orthoses, that are on, that can be purchased. They're not custom made. Initially we would look to trial to maintain your independence and safety with walking. Now the thing that and some of the examples that I've put in here, and this is just a few of them, but the thing that I love about some of the soft AFOs is they don't need to be worn with shoes. So there's actually in the bottom picture on the beach, there's a guy walking in jandals or fons, and he's got a yes, just had to say that, sorry. Yes, too. Oh, okay. So I knew I had an audience. There's a cuff around the forefoot that then links to the cuff around the lower leg, and that has an elasticated band that just helps to raise that the forefoot. And most people here in Queensland do like to walk bare feet. I don't go to too many houses where people have got shoes and socks on. That's an initial option, and I'm not saying it might not work forever, but it's a good starting option sometimes. I have a client who was fatiguing whilst on the golf course, so still independent with playing golf, but was finding that the foot was dropping during the head reduced to 9 holes, but fatiguing during the game, and he looked to purchase one of these that would then allow him to continue the 9 holes as long as possible. So there's lots of different options, and he's just using it for golf. Like you wouldn't necessarily use it all the time. Another client is getting 2 of them, and he's literally just going to wear them to work, and around the house he's not tripping over, and he's not going to use them at all at the moment. So there's lots of different options that we can discuss. Along with AFOs, we would look at stretches. Like I said before, when you're not using your joints and muscles the way you were, there is a risk that you'll get tightness around, and in this case around the foot and ankle, that could reduce your function. So we'd look at stretches to maintain, as well as talk about footwear. So I just said, like, great to walk barefoot, people love that, but there's also times when footwear, the type of footwear you have on, is important as well to reduce the risk of tripping and falls. That probably covers it. I'm going to talk a little bit about respiratory. So respiratory is a very specialised area of physiotherapy, and whilst my background, a lot of my background is actually working with spinal cord injuries in different settings around the world, and I have done respiratory as part of that. The techniques used in MND are quite different, and really what is very important is that the physiotherapist has access to lung function tests and sleep studies that are done to drive or determine their treatment plan. So here at MND Queensland, the physio service isn't offering respiratory, but rather I'll be doing any screening. So there are questions that I'll ask as part of our catch-ups, just to determine if there's any changes. Make sure that you are in contact with someone that's monitoring that, and I have contacts at the clinics with the coordinator or respiratory physio that we can help make sure that you are actually getting the right advice. But it's really important, it's a very medical thing, to make sure that we don't just provide half of the advice and then miss something. So I see Georgia, our speech pathologist, is nodding, because it's also really important that we don't miss timing, for example, of getting considering a PEG, because respiratory is very much linked to that. So I don't know if you've got any other things to add there, Georgia. Sorry, putting you on the spot.
You can tune in a month's time when I do my presentation.
Of course. But yeah, it's really linked to make sure that we get the right timing for things. So I talked about transfers before, and part of transfers is also, when you've transferred somewhere, is considering the position you're in. It's really important. Positioning is really important for comfort, and again, maintaining range of movement. So stretches are one thing, but sometimes we actually get a good stretch through good positioning. So the person on the right in the wheelchair has their legs in the wheelchair tucked quite far back, which is actually giving a good calf stretch, which means that if they're still able to stand, they've still got the range to do that. So we really want to, and we want to avoid through good positioning. We want to avoid any pressure areas, but we want to also maintain range and avoid secondary pain. We're looking, I guess, at positions that support any limbs that are weak and you can't support them yourself, rather than having it dangling and unsupported. And yeah, like I said, maintaining range of movement. Positioning, which we'll talk about in the next slide, or a couple of slides on, in the tilt posterior can be really important also for head control. So that we'll talk about that in a moment. So here we are. So the next thing I wanted to sort of, I guess, highlight is posture and head support. Like we said before, MND can affect different muscles in different ways, but one way that it could affect is the neck muscles, where our head's actually very heavy. I'm not good with stats, so I can't remember how heavy our head is compared with the rest of our body, but it's quite heavy. And so our neck's doing quite a big job, I guess, to hold our head upright. And having your head upright is really important for safe walking, safe transferring, and just for general if you're looking down and you're holding a heavy head up, it's really fatiguing as well. There's things that, again, it's not just one. As a physio, we're looking quite broad. There's not one solution to neck weakness. So there's things that you might do by using tilt. So the tilt of the recliner chair or the tilt of the power chair may be enough to hold your head comfortably while you're in a chair or watching TV or whatever. But it might be when you're, and the same within a car. We'll look at the type of support you've got in the car, and often what I'm seeing is people will look initially to needing some sort of neck control or head control for walking or standing only initially. So I've put some examples up there of some different types of collars on the market. But again, it's about trial and finding the best option and talking about the timing of when you might need to use it. And again, I'm reiterating, this is really general advice. Some people won't need neck control. It depends how MND affects you. The person with the black collar, that particular collar was actually designed for people with MND. Was designed in England. So what I've done is I've got a trial kit of different collars, and that is one of the collars that I've got, along with soft collars that are at the top and along with the collar that is on the left-hand side. And I guess when I went to trial it, with one of the clients, it was, I think, a 34, 35 degree day, and kind of said to him, yeah, I didn't think about this when I purchased it. We kind of both decided, and I know this client is part of this presentation at the moment, but we decided that it wouldn't be appropriate, only maybe in winter. So, there's lots of things we're going to consider when we're, and it's, I guess it's a discussion, it's working out together what's the best option. It is a great neck support, but probably not in Queensland. I guess we're looking at what you might be using it for. as to what's the best option. Again, stretches may be also really important as part of the use of a collar as well, because we don't want you to lose the range that you've got in your neck, because the tighter the muscles are, the more likely you are to be struggling to hold your head up. And again, we may not introduce stretches. I'm asking a lot of questions and looking at a lot of things when I'm doing my assessment, because if you're still driving and telling me that you're managing to look over your shoulder with no concerns, again, you're doing that stretch as part of your daily routine. We're not going to then spend time doing stretches on top. But that's why we keep reviewing any intervention that we've put in place to check that it's still the most current thing. Pillows are also really important. There's a photo at the top of someone on a pillow, but again, the height of a pillow and the position you are on a pillow is unique to every person, but it can be quite important in terms of maintaining, preventing pain and maintaining the right position. I've also put in here just around painful shoulder. So I guess pain isn't a symptom of motor neuron disease, but secondary pain can result. And we see it if we don't, from a really early stage, put the right things in place. We can see it with shoulders. So a shoulder joint, unfortunately, because it's a very mobile joint, so we have a lot of range within our shoulders, it means that because of the range that we've got, the control or the bony contact is very little. So we rely very much on muscles to control the position of our shoulder, and as they weaken, it puts a lot of stress on the ligaments because the muscles aren't holding that shoulder or the arm in the right position in the shoulder joint. It's a very complex joint. So really from quite an early time, we want to talk about how we manage that. Again, it might be that I've asked questions and you're maintaining the range just through your daily activities at that point, or we might introduce a program of simple stretches that you do, for example, before you get out of bed, to maintain that range. The top photo of myself working with someone on a transfer, we're using again that transfer belt, because sometimes we'll see transfers being done by support where they're pulling through an arm. If you haven't got the muscle control to resist the way someone's pulling you, then they're going to be tractioning your shoulder and potentially pulling on, like leading to damage of ligaments and muscles. So we want to avoid positions where we're pulling on arms. So we may introduce a transfer belt, which gives a more stable position to help with a transfer. And we'll look at strategies around supporting the weighted arm. So when you haven't got the muscle control, the weight is pulling down on that shoulder. Sometimes people will use two hands linked together when they're doing things. Sometimes they will put their hands in their pockets. There's lots of different strategies that, again, it's unique to each person as to what's comfortable for them and might be the right thing to do, or support from armrests on chairs and things like that, so your upper limb isn't dangling. I did leave this or put this photo in just to say that we do have a plinth or bed in the office that we can do consults in the office. My preference is to do them where possible in people's homes, because you get a more real idea of how they move in a bed. Like that plinth's very different from most beds people sleep on. You get a better idea of the surfaces they're transferring off that they're having difficulty with, the environment they're walking in, indoor, outdoor, that sort of thing. So I guess it's we can make it more real, but it is an option if there's constraints around for different people have different reasons why they'd rather do an appointment in an office. I skipped early intervention. I guess I just wanted, as part of this talk, to reiterate the importance of early intervention. I actually think it's quite important to meet and build a relationship very early on, and I do in fact see some clients before they've even got an NDIS plan, and they self-fund, and the reason why they're doing that is, I guess, that reassurance that they're doing the right thing. And generally it's been a one-off consult where I'll do an assessment and then give them some strategies and things that they can continue till they have funding, but prevention of, so we know MND is going to progress, but we can still prevent things so we can maintain your function and enjoyment in life for the things you love as long as possible. And so that making sure, I guess, sometimes when I've met with people later on and they've already given up some activities that they loved, and it's a discussion. There's ways that we might have been able to maintain those. There's still a discussion and a decision. Everyone's different. I know clients that have sat, for example, continued golf and reduced what they're doing golf-wise. There's other people that have said to me, no, if I can't play golf the way I was playing, I'm going to choose another activity. And that's a personal choice, but I think it's nice to have that early intervention, to have those discussions. When we give something up or lose it, is I guess how I describe it. I don't know if that's the best word. It's harder to reintroduce it than keep doing something. So one really good example is rolling onto your stomach. Sometimes that's just something we naturally stop doing, and it's actually people often sort of don't know why they stop doing it, but they just stop doing it, and it's actually quite hard to reintroduce it because you lose that function versus continuing it. And it might be that you don't continue it, but rolling onto your stomach again is a really good stretch. So there's things that we can talk about that we might be able to bring up that you hadn't thought about. And then I guess, again, I work very individually with people, but the timing of any reviews, and everyone, we always have a discussion around this, and everyone chooses something different as to what they're most comfortable with. Some people's, when we might have achieved all the initial goals, and they'll say, I'll just call you when this changes, and we've kind of talked about the things that they're going to look out for. There's other people that say, oh no, actually, I'd really like you just to give me a call every month, and then they know they can call me in between if they need to. Or there's other people that say, no, I'd actually really like you to just come out, 15, 20-minute chat every month. We'll identify, and sometimes me seeing them face to face will spark some things that they haven't noticed themselves. So it's very different for every person, and that's the importance, I guess, of the flexible service.